Hello and welcome to Behind the Story. I'm your host, Eli Sherman, here alongside my co-host, Dan McGowan of the Boston Globe. We are back for 2026, new year, new us. And Dan...
Same bad suits.
Same bad suits. And this week is kind of exciting because the legislative session is officially underway.
Yeah, I mean it's the biggest sort of, it's like nerd prom, right? It's the biggest moment, and we have such a great guest because it's somebody who, with respect to you, who I really appreciate your long form writing, maybe the most important or best profile writer in the state on the show. So.
I couldn't agree more, and without further ado, we'll bring her in. Ellen Liberman, a contributing writer and editor with Rhode Island Monthly. Ellen, welcome to the show.
Oh, well, I mean, what can you say about a welcome like that?
Are you running for governor?
I'm never leaving. No, I'm not running for governor.
Well, we have Ellen on because, as Dan mentioned, she is a fabulous fabulous writer, and does great stories for Rhode Island Monthly. This month, she wrote the cover story, which is called The Mediator. It is a profile on House Speaker Joe Shekarchi, which, as political junkies and news followers will know, is one of the more powerful lawmakers in all of the state. And I think to start, Ellen, I thought that it was such a great way that you sort of bookended this profile by going to the gun reform debate back in June. And it seemed like you were really there alongside the speaker for this moment, which of course he was overseeing. Can you walk us through what that was like?
Sure. When the story got assigned to me, first of all, I knew that I wanted to bookend it on the last day of the session. And I didn't know what was going to happen. A lot of times that can be a dramatic day or not. But, I asked him if he would possibly fire somebody in front of me or throw up the rostrum and go, "This is BS, man." But he refused. But when I met him in the morning, he said to me, "It's gun day." And I was like, okay, there's my lead right there. It's gun day. And I always really like a short sentence to start a story. If possible, a very short sentence. I had a colleague once at the Journal had to write about the death of Tiny Tim, do you know who he is?
Of course.
Okay. And Tiny Tim died playing the ukulele. And he said that to me, and I'm like, that's your lead.
It's
Tiny
the best when the
Tim
source hands you the lead.
Playing the ukulele, 6 words. So
ukulele's longer than that.
Anyway, so I just, and that's just really how the day unfolded, because you know how it is. You enter a story with an idea, but when you start your reporting, your idea may be totally wrong, or you see something better and you just adjust to that. So
What was your idea? I mean, you obviously knew, and we're going to talk about this more, about the possibility that Speaker Shekarchi may run for governor. So there's a reason to write the profile. But coming in, what did you expect, given your experience covering various Rhode Island politicians and past profiles?
I didn't, it's funny. Like, I knew a lot about his policies and his political, things he had done in terms of legislation. But I didn't know a lot about Joe. I didn't even know he was gay. I didn't know he was Iranian. I really didn't know that. So I just approach every profile exactly the same. I always want to talk to people's families if possible. I want to talk to your mother, your father, your partner, or your sibling, somebody who knows you really well. And then I just kind of think about, how can I capture this person doing what they do? And I went to Joe's party that he had for legislators to welcome them back. And I actually did another thing with him where he was with the East Greenwich Democratic Town Committee. That was on the day that Charlie Kirk got shot. And so the news media was there interviewing Joe about, the personal safety of public officials. And he actually was friends with the Speaker of the House in Minnesota, the woman who was assassinated.
Hartman, yeah.
Right. And that's something I couldn't get in, but yeah. So I look and see what my possibilities are, and I follow them around and see what happens.
I wonder, Ellen, because Dan and I, and Dan more than I have certainly covered Speaker Shekarchi for a long time, and so we know sort of the ins and outs of his daily interactions. We know a lot about the guy himself because we are watching it very frequently. I'm wondering for you coming in, you mentioned a couple things about his personal life. Was there anything that really surprised you about the speaker?
I don't know if it really surprised me, but I was very heartened to see how hard he works out relationships. That is so important to getting things done in a political environment. And I've seen people come in who want to do my way or the highway kind of thing. It's not really all that effective. If you take like Carcieri, for an example, he really hated the legislature.
Right.
Wanted nothing to do with them. Well, you're a weak governor state, and you're not going to get anything done if you don't find a way to work with the legislature to actually achieve some policy priorities. And I just think I knew that that I felt like I agreed with a lot of the stuff he did. It kind of aligned with democratic values that I also hold as a person and as a citizen. But I really didn't expect him to be this person who really gives up his entire day and night to talking to people and comforting people. I mean, people told me that, like other legislators, like if they were really upset, they would call him like at 2 or 3 in the morning, and he'd pick up because they knew he would pick up.
Yeah.
And they were upset about like some piece of legend or something that was going on. So
yeah, and in full disclosure, I talked to you for the story. I'm quoted in the story, and I think one of the things to pull back the onion a little bit, you and I talked a little bit about was admittedly a struggle that I have. I think you probably have it too, and I think you acknowledge in the story that you aren't going to find very many people who have a real bad thing to say about him. The worst thing that you could probably say about him is he cares too much about consensus and that kind of thing. And I'm curious, I mean, were you usually that you can find somebody to say he's a real jerk? Were you surprised you didn't find that?
Well, I did speak with one legislator who was not a happy camper, but that person refuse, and I gave everybody an opportunity to speak way off the record if they want. I totally respect, I respect those boundaries. I really had a hard time. That person had, not ranted, but kind of, unloaded, and then wanted nothing to do with anything that could possibly say anything that could possibly be traced back. And then I said, well, is there anyone else? Oh, well, there's this person, that person. So I had sent out an email to with a few exceptions, almost all the Democratic legislators, an individual email to each one, so they didn't feel like a mass email.
Right.
So, and
well,
none
to
of
that
them.
point, Ellen, I wonder because,
Yeah.
you mentioned one person said a bunch of things, but then sort of walked it back. I did mention he is one of the most powerful people in the state. Did you get a sense from talking to people that they only had glowing things to say because they didn't want to say something critical about someone and get some type of retribution, whether that be policy-wise?
Yeah, like how authentic do you think it is that everybody loves Joe Shekarchi?
I think that a lot of it was pretty sincere.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do. I mean, I think, Joe has a long memory. He doesn't forget, but I don't think he's vindictive. He might, make you suffer a little bit, but compared to his predecessor, night and day. I mean, the previous speaker seemed to delight in telling people no and letting particularly female legislators know that they were getting nowhere and seemed to enjoy that. And somebody told me that he can't even be a lobbyist because no one will meet with him because.
Of course, that's former House Speaker Nick Mattiello.
He left so many.
Who lost in a general election
Right.
to a first-time candidate,
Barbara
Fenton Fung.
Right.
We have to take a quick break, but when we come back, we will be asking the question, will Joe be running or not? Stick with us. Welcome back to Behind the Story. I'm your host, Eli Sherman, joined by my co-host, Dan McGowan of the Boston Globe. And our guest this week is Ellen Liberman of Rhode Island Monthly. We are talking about Ellen's profile of House Speaker Joe Shekarchi in Rhode Island Monthly, which is the January edition. People should go out and get it on your newsstands right now. Guys, I want to talk a little bit about the political aspirations of Joe Shekarchi. For people who watch politics or know the speaker himself, they'll know that his answer so far comes as no surprise. But this is him on Monday, actually on our air, telling our other co-host, Kim Kalunian, about what he thinks about running for governor. Take a listen.
Speaker, we are basically out of time, but I can't let you go without asking about whether or not you're going to run for governor. Can you answer that question as we stand here today?
No, I cannot.
Will the voters...
And if I did, to be honest with you, I'd have to tell Ted Nesi first.
Okay,
so,
fine,
sorry,
fair enough.
Kim.
But as we stand here right now, will the voters of Rhode Island know by the end of this month what your decision is?
I think I've said all along it's the first quarter, and I think that's pretty consistent. Not much will change.
All right, we will stay tuned. House Speaker Joe Shekarchi, thanks so much for being here.
It's always my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
There you have it, demur, if you will. He's not going to answer that question just yet, and that's been his answer for much of the last 2 years, really. When people have asked whether or not that's something he'd be interested in, he has the most money of any state candidate in the state, in his war chest politically. Ellen, you spent a lot of time with him. What do you think? Is he going to run?
I asked him several times. Got this same answer. One of the people who showed up to the Democratic, East Greenwich Democratic Town Committee meeting was some guy I started chatting with who turned out to be a Democratic, like a major Democratic operative, I think Ron Goldstein?
Oh, yeah, Goldstein.
Yeah. And when I was interviewing Joe in his family home in Connecticut, I'm like, why did you want this profile? Why did you have Ron Goldstein there? Aren't you running? Well, you don't need him there just to hear what you're going to say to a bunch of Democrats. I couldn't crack him. I think that he's waiting to find out what Dan McKee's going to do, because I don't think he wants to be in a three-way race, and I think Joe is cautious, and I don't think if he runs, I don't think he wants to lose. Not that anyone who runs wants to lose, but I think he really doesn't. So
yeah, and we should remind folks that Dan McKee, the incumbent governor, of course, has said that he's going to be running for re-election. The other Democrat who said that they're going to run is Helena Foulkes, who's the former CVS executive and who ran and lost against Dan McKee in the primary in 2022. So, Dan, I want to switch gears a little bit because you actually came out with a column today. Dan is a political columnist, and if you don't read him, you should. And it was rather eye-grabbing, I would say, because the title was Rhode Island Faces Pressing Issues. Speaker Shekarchi's Will He or Won't He Act is Getting Old. And you wrote one of my favorite lines from it, that Rhode Island can't sit idly by while Shekarchi dithers in prolonged ambiguity. So I'd like those are some tough words for the speaker.
Ellen prefers short sentences. I prefer run-on sentences is the way to go there.
I didn't say every sentence has to be short, just the first one.
Well, look, the reason I wrote that column was a couple, threefold, let's say. One, it was good timing, right? It's the start of the legislative session. We know he's been sort of in the news thinking about doing this. Another was quite frankly was Alan's profile of him. You read it, you hear from lots of people, or you see lots of people who think very highly of him. I largely agree with everything that you wrote. I think he is a good guy who wants to do right by the state. He clearly likes the attention that he gets for running. So, another reason why I think he is very much flirting with it. And then you listened to him yesterday talking about, I should say, we listened to him on Tuesday, first day of the legislative session, talking about states facing big problems, buckle up or buckle down, or, whatever he was saying. And meanwhile, he's getting... The only thing he's actually thinking about is, can I raise more money, and should I be the governor, right? Can I get the governor out of the race? Those kind of things. And to me, it's time to make a decision. I think it is. I am concerned that his the act that he's put on for a very long time now, it may be a reflection of whether or not he could actually govern very well. I think it is concerning, and I thought it was worth it to kind of say the quiet part aloud, what a lot of people I think are thinking, which is, come on, make your decision, let's move on. And then you didn't ask, but I'll say it anyway. And when it comes to will he or won't he, my gut is he won't. I think that like Ellen, I agree. I think he's waiting for Governor McKee to get out of the race. And Governor McKee is showing no signs of doing that. He does not care if he's, potentially a 15, 20-point underdog in this race. He's staying in. So to me, it's going to be very hard for Speaker Shekarchi to get in this race and win.
Yeah, but I don't think it says anything about his ability to govern if he were to be a governor. I think he would actually be a good governor. Mm-hmm. But I do think I think it boils down to what we both said. Like, he doesn't want to lose, and he's worried about a three-way race, and I understand what the dynamics of that are. So.
Yeah, and you captured one of the things I liked about the profile. Like you said, nobody likes to lose, right? It's kind of it's sort of an obvious thing, but in capturing sort of the human behind the politician, I get the sense that you felt like he's a sensitive guy, right? I mean, this is more than just, I think he knows that his name is very much associated with Rhode Island politics, and if you give up the speakership and then you lose the governor's race, you are no longer getting to be on with Kim Kalunian every week or every couple of weeks. You sort of are out of the loop. You're out of the game.
Yes, but he left the game before.
Yeah.
And he decided. I mean, Joe is kind of a strategic person, I believe, and he's a strategic politician as well. And I think like he walked away after 2 decades, I believe, of like doing practically everything you could possibly do in politics, and decided to do something else. And I think he can do that again.
Yeah.
All right, I just have to ask one question. Did you get to play with his dog?
I did. Well, Merlin is a very calm dog, so he wasn't like bugging me to throw a frisbee at him or anything. But he's a very sweet dog, and yes, I do get to pet him.
If for nothing else, people should go read her write-in about the dog. It is like you know the dog immediately, even if you've never seen it. That is unfortunately all the time that we have. But I would encourage people not to walk, but to run to the newsstands to pick up this cover story.
But not in Warwick. They're all mysteriously gone in Warwick.
They're selling out. They're selling off of the stands to get your copy today. And if you don't already, be sure to read Ellen's writing, because it's just absolutely terrific. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, and when we come back, the stories we wish we wrote. Stick with us. Welcome back to Behind the Story. I'm your host, Eli Sherman, alongside my co-host, Dan McGowan of the Boston Globe, and we're entering into the final segment of our show, Dan, which is the stories that we wish we wrote, where we talk about other reporters and the fine work that they've done over the past week. Dan, I don't want to start with yours because it's mine.
Very weird, but we're still going to do it.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
And we don't do this that often.
No, we don't.
We don't really read each other. You had a great story. I think it was a follow-up from maybe a Bloomberg article about this Pawtucket soccer stadium and this windfall of money that this pretty small, I guess, boutique firm is making. I'm always fascinated both with your coverage of what's happening at the Pawtucket soccer stadium, the Rhode Island FC stadium, of course, Centerville Bank Stadium, we should say. And one of the things I love about your coverage of it more than anyone else, quite frankly, is you have really dug into and understand the financing scheme here. And in this case, when you have a $20 million windfall where we don't think that there's necessarily anything, it doesn't appear like you did, there's anything necessarily sketchy about it. But when you know about all the money that taxpayers are putting into this, and to find out that a kind of small firm is getting a lot of money here, a little bit alarming.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, right? Because basically, in very basic terms, we borrowed money at $1, and then we paid for it back at $1.28, which in 2 years. And so the investor got off with a 28% gain, and that is like a great investment for anyone in the financial world. You look at that and you say, I can get 28% in 2 years.
Someone's
yes,
getting a bonus for that decision.
But the investor, Rosemar Management, they made a huge gamble on this stadium because they were the only investor that would step up and buy these bonds. Because if you remember at the time, construction had stalled, all the private financing had dried up. It was a risky bet for traditional municipal bond investors in the country, and Rosemar took a gamble, and boy, did it pay off. Now, I should mention that local and state officials are adamant that even though they're paying this premium to get the bonds back, that it will end up saving taxpayers about $15 million.
Refinance, basically.
It's a refinance. Yeah. So like you refinance a mortgage, you get it, you get a lower rate, and through those savings, they think that even after they pay that premium, the taxpayers will save $15 million over 30 years, basically. Yep. So thank you for letting me talk about financing. It's never a dull moment.
About you, Eli.
I'm going back to the State House because our friend Nancy Lavin of Rhode Island Current, she wrote just a great preview of what we're going to see at the State House. And she just does great State House coverage in general, but I really like this because it broke down all of the categories of what people should look towards as sort of the contentious issues. And it was healthcare. No surprise, but she went into the detail as to why these are going to be issues. So it was healthcare, education and housing, workforce, taxing on the rich, the Washington Bridge fallout, and RIPTA, which of course has a huge hole in it. So,
yeah, and we've had Nancy on the show before. We obviously think very highly of her. I think she was either 1 or 2 or 1A, 2A on the number of stories that we wish we wrote last year. I'm sure she's
the most mentioned, along with Antonia. I'm just going to switch gears immediately.
Right, who was the other one? Yeah,
because she is my other pick. She wrote a story, What Happens If Narragansett Bay Freezes Over? Here are tales from history. And she went back to the 1700s to look at accounts of the Narragansett Bay freezing over. And there was actually sleighs that went back and forth, between the East Bay and the West Bay. And the last, I learned so many things as I do from reading Antonia, which included the last time that it froze over in any substantial way was 1994. So it's been a long time since, people have been able to walk out on that ice, which they say you shouldn't do. Right. But but in general, she just does a great job.
And having sat with her here, I can just picture her kind of giggling in excitement about everything she was finding for that story. So
yeah. All right, we got a quick. You can do a quick one more.
And my colleague Alexa Gagas has a really good story. Obviously, there's been a lot of coverage on this show and everywhere about the tragic shooting at Brown University. And Alexa kind of looked into the role that AI played in trying to find the shooter. Obviously, it was a flawed method by a lot of online users, and she really dug deep, talked to the detectives, and about how much of a problem this was. And I think it's only going to be a bigger problem in all cases going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Putting law enforcement on wild goose chases just by AI using the wrong system to make faces that are not real. All right, that's all the time that we have, but we hope you'll come back next week and join us. You can find all of these on our website, WPRI.com, and also on our podcast. For Dan McGowan, I'm Eli Sherman. Thank you for watching Behind the Story.